Yeah. Okay.
What happened to everybody? Does Bahab or something? Was the
was it Bahab too? Last one.
Yeah. Okay. We were in Maimer Vav, and I commented on how this so beautifully dovetails with what we're learning in Shabbos Pirkei Avos. So it's just almost miraculous how they come together. Let me just say over this Ramchal one more time so we understand what I think is the basic to Ratzon, and that is that man, Adam and Chava was born in Gan Eden, and according to Plan A, that would have been it forever. There would never have been a need for a Mashiach, because that would have been a situation of Geula. There would have been never a need for bringing us into Eretz Yisrael, even, because that would have grown to Eretz Yisrael. That's what the Medrash says. Even though it was not in Eretz Yisrael, it would have grown to Eretz Yisrael from the outside in. It was only after the Chet that Plan B had to go into effect, and Plan B is now we need a Mashiach and a Geula to get us back into Eretz Yisrael. And there were many tries at this, the Ramchal says, many different chances in history we had to get back into this Gan Eden. The main point here is, without getting too wide, just deep, the main point is that there's no difference between the situation of Adam HaRishon Kodem Hachet and the world after the Geula Shlema. There was no Misa, here there's Tchias HaMesim. There was no wars, here it's Lo Yisa Goyel Goy Cherev. There's peace. There was before Adam HaRishon Kodem Hachet, there was no need to sweat, to have the sweat of your brow create your bread. It was there automatically in the Gan Eden. When Mashiach comes, Asid ha'ilanois lahaitzi gluska'is, bread will grow on trees. Not even money, because you don't need money when bread grows on trees. What do you need money for? Asid ha'begadim, I say the money is also one of the curses of the Galus. That you need a currency.
What a curse.
Curse. It could be used as a bracha like everything else, but when Mashiach comes, who says that that's going to be the way things work? There was a try. There were tries in history, even from a secular point of view, of trying to bring the Geula into Galus. It wasn't impractical because we're in Galus. If you look, I mean, I was young but old enough to remember. If you look at the hippie communes of the 60s, it was to get rid of, to live from the earth, and there should be that everything should be peace and bartering, and there should be no money, and they all starved until they went to university and became lawyers and MBAs. It wasn't a practical thing, but the concept was an interesting concept, because the concept was an Adam HaRishon Kodem Hachet concept to knock down the barriers, and even Vayarki Arumim Haim. There was total sexual freedom. It was all part of that. It was articulated as such. It was all part of that. Although, as they say, if you remember the 60s, it means you weren't there. Very deep.
I'm not saying anything.
No, the only ones that can remember it are people like me that weren't old enough to totally be immersed in it, just to watch it be rachok, But it's so what that's the Ramchal.
What about Ra before the Chet and Mashiach?
So the Ra was there as a davar chitzon.
So it's going to be like after, or
I guess nachash, So
why did you need that?
Okay, needs to be explained. On Shabbos, I pointed out that one of the greatest tries for, one of the closest tries for Mashiach, that's what we're learning about now, was Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu was the Mashiach who was supposed to do finally for us the tikkun of the chet of Adam HaRishon, and he did it. Ad kedei kach, he did it. He came to the matzav of Har Sinai, where there was nothing missing, nothing was needed, and people heard straight from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and everybody was at peace. And lechem lo yachelti, mayim lo yashasisi. And in the words of the Chazal, in a sentence, Paska zoamosam shal nachash. The zuama of the nachash was Paska, but then we did the Egel Azav. So the Egel Azav,
The equivalent of the nachash.
same as the Eitz Hadas. Same as the Eitz Hadas. Which brings us right here. So Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't be Mashiach, he couldn't bring us into Eretz Yisrael. And even though we had on Yom Kippur, v'salachti kidvarecha, we had a mechila for the Eitz Hadas, for the Egel Hazav, which was equivalent to the Eitz Hadas. Nevertheless, Chazal tell us that beyond pakti pakadati, that there's still a Rishon. Why is there still a Rishon? Kadosh Baruch Hu forgives us. The answer is we're still Isaac in the Egel Hazav. So of course, the Egel Hazav is when Moshe Rabbeinu came down from Har Sinai and he said, Mi la Hashem elai. Are you pro the chet of the Eitz Hadas? Or are you anti the chet of the Eitz Hadas? You made it Egel Hazav means you're pro the chet of the Eitz Hadas. Naselonu Elohim asher nelech lefanenu. We'll make God. That's what the Nachash said. So, Mi la Hashem elai wasn't everybody. Those that came over to him, Shevet Levi, and a process began where we're still waiting and working on Mashiach. So I pointed out on Shabbos that if you take Moshe and David, so Moshe is the Haskalah of Mashiach and David is the end of Mashiach, so the gematria of Moshe and David is 358 Mashiach. Exactly. So one of the Chachamim in the crowd said, and so is the gematria of Nachash. So nothing is by accident, yes? Moshe, David, Nachash. Nachash was the Mashiach Sheker. Nachash was the Mashiach Sheker. I'll get you. I'm the Egel Azav. I'll show you how to get a permanent gula.
It seems though that there is a difference between Gan Eden and when Mashiach comes, in that one is, seems like we won't sin again. We're going to be at a stage which will be eternally that state, which means the matzav will be different, perhaps because we already ate from Eitz Hadas and now we're getting Eitz Chaim. So that's a different state of mind than.
100% correct. Let me say it over in my words, what you say. That the difference between the Adam HaRishon Kodem Achet and Adam HaRishon Acher Achet is like the difference between the first Luchos and the second Luchos, like the difference between Torah Shebiksav and Torah Shebal Peh, like the difference between anything which is given to us as a simple gift and something that we have to work for 6,000 years. The working and the galus and the pain that we went through and being shaken up on a regular basis. There was never in history, I believe, a major swaying away from Yiddishkeit by Jews, a major movement of assimilation by Jews that wasn't almost immediately followed by a major repercussion, major onesh on the Jews. Not words anybody likes to hear, but that's check your timeline and your chronology of history, and it's so clear. It's so clear. You know, every time we do this Eitz Hadas thing, and we say, okay, we're in charge, there's an immediate galus, eviction from the Gan Eden, and we're always almost there, not there. This is true throughout history, and all of those ups and downs and painful revelations. I once heard with my ears from Rabbi Kaplan, that he said that he was my NCSY director. So, the regional NCSY director. So I remember coming to Buffalo when I was a child and speaking, and he said that there's people talk. This was 60s, right? That people talk about a Baal Tshuva movement after the 6 Day War. He said there's never been a Baal Tshuva movement in the history of the Jewish people. What there is the Jewish people getting off track for a time, and then eventually getting back on track. So it's not about Tshuva movement. It's what we're seeing today. Children, he told us, is just the Jewish people getting back on track, and it's not going to take 6 years or 7 years. It could take 100 years, but eventually, Am Yisrael will get back on track, and hopefully Mashiach comes, or unless we once again go off track. So what you're saying is emes, that it's the Sarusa de L'Sato, or the work that we do, and that makes it our kinyan, and not just a gift of Gan Eden. So Kadosh Baruch Hu said, okay, you have it your way. You do it the hard way. So that's the Ramchal, that's the Ratzon of Hashem. Here he says, this is the exact right segue. Utchilas luchos rishonos. Here's an interesting, let's do an examination for a moment of the differences between the first set of luchos which Moshe brought and the second set of luchos that Moshe brought. It says, Tchilas luchos harishonos, hayu pirsum v'hisgalus gomer. Very open stage. It was very mefursam. Everybody standing at Har Sinai heard Hashem say, Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Everybody saw the thunder, the lightning. It was a real matzav there at Har Sinai. Pirsum v'hisgalus gomer. That's the one that didn't work out for us. Ki az zachul izdachech legamri li'escheros mimalach hamavis v'yetzer hara. Imagine that at that situation there was Tchias HaMesim at Har Sinai. Nobody was hungry. Nobody was fighting. The word of Hashem was coming forth from the Shemayim. It was in that situation, coming off of that situation, that we made the Egel Hazav. That's the Pella. It's maskir, and it's reminiscent of the fact that in the Bayis Rishon, so all the miracles took place. There was in there Tamid, there was the Eish Hashem that came down, and the Levium were singing, and you could smell the Reach Nichoach of Hashem. The smoke went straight up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Unbelievable nisim in the Bayis Rishon. And why was the Bayis Rishon destroyed? Because we developed a culture during that time of Gilui Arayah, Shvichas Damim, and Avodah Zarah. So says the Gemara in Yuma. Hello, how does a person go and do Gilui Arayah, Shvichas Damim, and Avodah Zarah when all of these miracles are so clear and so obvious? The answer is that's not what's going to make us strong people. Watching miracles is not. It's nice to have that outside environment, but it's not coming from the inside. So if it's not coming from the inside, you can have all of those things happen on a regular basis. But I don't like him, so I'm going to kill him.
Forget miracles. I'm having a hard time to understand that. The miracle aside, the Shekhinah was there.
Yeah.
So how come the Shekhinah was not able to influence us?
Also in Gan Eden, Koda Machet.
So how come the
also Matan Torah, because the Shekhinah doesn't take away your Bechira Chavshis Kinera. It actually feeds the godliness within us, which makes us do Chet, which makes us create Avodah Zarah. If you don't deal with the Shekhinah practically, so the Luchos Rishonos had full Gilui Shekhinah, full exposure, full Gilui Shekhinah. Ki azachol isdachich legamri li'escheros mimalach hamavis v'yetzer hara. No yetzer hara. Kasha, right? But once we did the Egel Hazov, Av shenim chalahem oisayavain. Even though Hashem said, Salachti kidvarecha, took from Shavuos to Yom Kippur, but Hashem said, Salachti kidvarecha, mikom mochem namar b'yom pakti ufokadati. Nevertheless, Hashem still remembers the Egel Hazav, ki adayid dishar shoresh v'roshem hara. Because shoresh, let's look at the words. Not just that chet is still made a roshem, which doesn't go away. there's a shorish to that chet which didn't go away. Was the chet was stopped, the Egel Azav was crushed, but was it mushrash? Was it uprooted legamri to the point that it's impossible to do that chet again? There was no root canal of that chet. There was just a apparently superficial filling, no pain. V'alkein nitnu, and therefore we needed luchais shniyos, the second luchais, and they were given b'chashay. Now this is important. They were given b'chashay, quietly. It's a Gemara Shabbos. Gemara Shabbos, the luchais harishaynai shenitnu b'galui, b'pumbi, I think was in the Gemara, that the first luchais that were given publicly, open display, full exposure, did not work out. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, let's change strategies here. And with the second set of luchos, we are in Shavuos, right? We're learning about this. The second set of luchos were quiet. Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Har Sinai. There was no thunder, there was no lightning, there was no voice of Hashem. And there was Jews hanging out on the bottom of the mountain waiting for Moshe to come down. All right? But it was, and they waited. This time they waited. So waiting for a kapara from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Salachti Kidvarecha, Moshe Rabbeinu came down a little bit. So that's called B'chashay. Now, when you learn the Gemara Stam, you understand, I think the Pashup Shot of this Gemara is that from here we learn the koach of, like Ayin Hara, it's better to do things quietly than to do things loudly and as an exhibitionist, because look at the Luchos Rishonos didn't work, the Luchos Shniyos didn't work. But the Gemara doesn't say that. The Gemara says that B'chashay worked for us. What's the pshat? Here Tzaddik says a phenomenally deep idea. What's the pshat in the second luchos being given in a modest, conservative, closed, quiet manner? Luchos shniyos nitnu b'chashay u'betzina b'hishra hashchina. Now there was Hashras Hashchina once again, just like there was Hashras Hashchina by the first Luchos, but the Hashras Hashchina from this point on, after Yom Kippur, L'macharas Yom Kippurim, there was Hashras Hashchina on Klal Yisrael again, because Hashem said, Salachti Kidvarecha. Where was the Hashras Hashchina? Where? In the Mishkan. In the Oil Bayit. The Mishkan. The Moshe Rabbeinu built with Klal Yisrael. It was no longer about the Shchinos everywhere. It was no longer about everybody's feeling the holiness. Who? Moshe Rabbeinu went to the Almighty. He had the Nevuah. As the Mishkan was built, there's a Kohen Gadol. So the Kohen Gadol went to the Kodesh HaKadoshim, L'Dvir Kodesh Haviyadi. He went into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and there he was margish the Shechina. So the feeling of the experience of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur in the Kodesh HaKadoshim was the experience of Adam HaRishon Kohen Machet. That's what that was. And Klal Yisrael stood on the outside watching. And if he has a chet, the Kohen Gadol has a chet, then he's an Adam HaRishon Kohen Machet who has a chet. And he can't be in that situation, so he gets pulled out by a rope. But the righteousness of the experience of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippurim, the purity of the Begadim, and the Tevilos and the Hazois of the entire Avodah that we say on Yom Kippur, if we could all remember that far ahead into Yom Kippur, it's the experience of Adam HaRishon Kohen Machet. But it was a very, very private experience. It wasn't an experience that the whole Klal Yisrael had. Why? Because it was not the Luchos Rishonos, it was Luchos Shniyos. Daika, that if the Luchos Rishonos, if we wouldn't have built the Egel Azav, there would not have been a Luchos Shniyos, and there would not have been a Yom Kippur. What's Yom Kippur? Yom Kippur is the day that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Mechaper on the vice of the Egel. No Maisa Egel, there would have been a Geula, Pascha Zubasa, Vasvar Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur you need when you do Averas. If we would not have done the Ma'aseh the Egel Azav, if we would have just been 100% pure at that moment, Mashiach would have come, no more Yom Kippur. Is there going to be Yom Kippur when Mashiach comes at the end? Asid kol avodim liyos b'teil. What are you going to be Yom Kippur about? Whole day is going to be Yom Kippur. I don't know if we're too excited about that, but that's...
Yeah, the tikkun of the Sphira, when they came from Mitzrayim, came the Isserus at the Milatata. So what did that accomplish? In other words, we're saying that the Saf Kol Sof...
Because there's 7 layers of those spheres. And then it could have accomplished, that was, we got to the part of the Luchas Rishonos. There was a Malchus, but the Malchus wasn't deep enough because it has to go through 7 times. Shiva signs off.
In terms of Adam HaRishon, so what level was that in terms of the ups and downs of Adam HaRishon?
Why wasn't it just like exactly Adam HaRishon was Koydem Achet? Exactly. Paskazu Amasan Shal Nachash.
But that was
in other words, backspace. If we go backspace to one character before the Nachash, we can do this all over again. Time machine.
That was before the Sinus scenario. They already the Paskazu Amasan was not Ali Day.
Well, standing together and hearing when they heard Anochi Hashem Elokecha.
When they heard Anochi. So that was the Machim Pathers there, no?
No. So, okay. Adam HaRishon Koydem Achet, total Nevuah. Total Nevuah. Open to everybody.
So
I don't want to lose the point. The point is that backspace, we're one character before the Bais of the Nachash. Here we are at Har Sinai. What do? We eat for the Eitz Hadas. So it's not a kasha. We eat for the Eitz Hadas. We built an Egel Azav. So it's not a kasha why the Roshim and the Shirish of the Egel Azav still remains. The Chiddush here is that, what does that mean it remains? That Hashem said, okay, there's Luchos Shniyos, that's something, but just like the Luchos Shniyos are Nitna B'chashoy, are given quietly, so too will the Shechina be Shir al Klal Yisrael quietly. The Kodesh HaKadoshim only, on the Chruvim only, not on the whole Klal Yisrael. Let's go a little further, please. Rak HaKohen Gadol b'yoyim HaKippurim she'az hu bezuchach v'naki, because it's at that point that the Kohen Gadol is bezuchach, pure, v'naki, and clean. B'chol ish lo yavai ba'oil moed, and the din is that nobody else is allowed to go into that oil moed. All connected to the Luchos Shniyos, the experience. So the experience was, yes, Adam HaRishon Koydem Achet, but it was the experience of Moshe Rabbeinu on Har Sinai by getting the Luchos Shniyos. The real trifecta here is Adam HaRishon Koydem Achet, Moshe Rabbeinu Acher Hachet, getting the Luchos Shniyos, getting the Kapara, and that's what happened on Yom Kippur. When was that? That was on Yom HaKippurim. So the Kohen Gadol in the base Kodesh HaKadoshim on Yom Kippur is mimicking b'diuk. The Kohen Gadol is mimicking b'diuk Moshe Rabbeinu going into the Kodesh HaKadoshim of Har Sinai, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu saying Salachti Kidvarechas, and saying so much, so that also to the Kohen Gadol, who would then come out of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and we would say Kohen, right? that was the niggin of the Mara Kohen, where we saw the Atzilus and the Lichtigkeit and the Simcha of the Kohen Gadol. It was the same thing as watching Moshe Rabbeinu come out of the Kodesh HaKadoshim of Har Sinai with the Luchos Shniyos biyadai. And they went into the Aron Kodesh, and in the Aron Kodesh was the place of Hisgalus, because that's what was in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, with the Chruvim on top of it. It's all such a perfect package. That's where it all came together to get to the Gilui Shechina.
And you must Mashiach, there won't be any possibility of repeating the Chet of Adam HaRishon.
Well, that's what Reb David was saying.
Right,
Probably.
so if so, So before before Chet Egel, what would have had to take place in order for us to reach that mile?
What was missing?
What was missing was our own avodah. We went through. You keep asking the same thing again. We went through the spheros, but
We got Matan Torah, and we
it wasn't deep enough.
Uh-huh.
Same thing as the Bayis
But
Rishon.
if we had waited, and Moshe brought the Luchas, that would have been the whole thing.
Wasn't
And
deep enough
that would
even
have
within
finished
us.
at that point. Would be Masa Mashiach.
Yeah,
Wasn't deep enough within us.
yeah. It didn't go deep enough. Just like the Bayis Rishon.
So
It was all happening, but it wasn't deep enough.
So the Luchas, if the Luchas had remained, that would have been the final.
Yeah, that would have been the Gula. Pascha Zilmasa. We did the Tikkun. Moshe takes us into the Promised Land. Within a few days, we're in Eretz Yisrael. That would have been the end of it. Yeah. It was a bigger mess up in a way, or a more grand mess up in a certain way for our Havana than the Eitz Hadas Kufa. But that would have been it. Moshe Rabbeinu got the Luchos, Pascha Zilmasa. We were just masaking the Chet of Adam HaRishon. Let's go. There wouldn't have even been a Mishkan. Let's just go. No need for a Mishkan until the Bayishen, until the Lucha Shniyos. There was no need for a Mishkan. That was it. And these Luchos were Benes. From all the Nisim of the Luchos were Benes. We would have had a clear Kriyas Hayartain, and that would have been the Mashiach, and that would have been the end of the whole procedure of Golus. There wouldn't have been wars. There wouldn't have been Sefer Yeshua. There wouldn't have been a Holocaust. That would have been it.
And Yisro Zaitza wouldn't have been necessary.
Yeah.
It's all a question of waiting, not doing.
Yeah. Which we were just waiting.
Waiting.
Just waiting.
Same with Adam HaRishon. He had just waited.
Yeah. And a little patience.
That's it.
That's asking a little too much.
So it's like
You
Yeah,
said
you're
before
right, because the fact that we're created, we're created to do, not to wait.
why is it that when every time we get so close that we fail?
Ah.
I don't know. No, I have the emotion.
It's hard.
Not just to get so close, but the Gil Shechina so close. So why?
I don't know the answer, except I wonder if deep inside of us we believe it's a better situation. The Adam HaRishon Kodim Achet, the Adam HaRishon Acher Achet. Nice when having to accomplish and
Is this a plachal? It's nice.
nice, you know, feeling of accomplishment. You know, I mean, look at those skyscrapers in Manhattan. You get out of the train in Grand Central Station, and you look up and you see it's all about money, like buildings and buildings and buildings and buildings, 70 stories, 80 stories, everything's it's all. You know, when you look at Bezeias Apech Toichalas. That's Geschmack.
You go to the Alps, you see because Baruch's creation.
Okay, so I'm not sure whether we like the Alps better than the General Motors building. I'm not. Obviously, it's nicer, but I'm not convinced that if most of us would make that choice, we would choose the spiritual way. So what's in it for me? Look at the Meraglim as an example. It's not so pashut that we're willing to give up, that we want to be in control, which is basically what the Nachash said to Adam HaRishon, and basically what the Jews did with the Egel Azav, and what the world did when they built the Dar Hapalaga. They built that first skyscraper. It's not so. What did they build? They built that World Trade Center. You know that the Dar Hapalaga, the Big Dal Bavel, was exactly that. It's not so pashut that we're willing and interested even in giving up on all of that. I'm not giving Musar. I'm just answering your question of explaining that I don't think it's a kasha why we keep on going back to that same situation.
The minute that we're created, we're separate from Hashem. He created as separate entity
And powerful. So now to give all that, Moshe Rabbeinu did. Moshe Anav Mikol Adam.
Right.
He gave it up. He gave up everybody. Yoshua did. What was the godless of Yoshua? Sure, hey, Mrs. Atzmai, Moshe. He was willing to be made Mrs. Atzmai. Moshe Rabbeinu demanded of the people, Mi Lashem Elai, Shevet Levi came. No, not everybody came forward. It's not so pashut, Would you come forward? Let's go a little further. V'chol ish lo yavoi ba'oil moyeh ki tzarech liyos b'chashoy. Kisham. Now, what is the hiddenness of the oil moyeh? Here we go. Let's take it a step further. Kisham HaKruvim, because in the Kodesh HaKadoshim on Yom HaKippurim, or all the time for that matter, was the Aron Kodesh, and on top of the Aron Kodesh was the Kruvim. Sham HaKruvim Kimer Ish Vloyos, and the Kruvim were the Kruvim were a man and a woman, an Ish v'Ishtai, hugging each other. They were in an embrace. The openness, the unsneus, if you will, of the Kruvim had to be in a private situation, the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and nobody could come in. Kimer ish v'loya shehu davar shebetzina. Umechabdel hizilua ki ro ervasa. K'moshe Amar Chazal de'etzol nechshav zeh erva v'shikua taiko. And the Babylonians, and after that the Romans invaded the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So they took out the Kruvim, which were Me'urim zeh b'zeh. Me'urim is the lashon of the pasuk of Kimer ish v'loyos. It's a lashon of mer, me'urim zeh b'zeh, lashon of erva, arayos, arumim, me'urim zeh b'zeh. Completely open, transparent, and intimate. Openly intimate, is that a contradiction in terms? Openly intimate with each other. So when the Goyim saw it,
that's Gan Eden before the Chay.
That's Gan Eden before the Chay. But when the Goyim saw it, they said, what a bunch of nevolim the Jews are. And when the Kohen Gadol saw it, he said, I'm in a situation of Adam HaRishon and Reuvein. Exactly that. It was only after the Chet that they realized, Ki arumim anachnu. Because after the Chet, this becomes an issue. Before the Chet, what's harum? Davar shebekdusha. So, as long as the Gilui Ashchina, as long as it's in the Kodesh HaKadoshim on Yom HaKippurim, to be arumim. But when there was, that's why, by the way, just so, what laning do we read on Yom Kippur?
Arayos.
Parshas Arayos. Arayos was thinking Arayos and Yom Kippur. It's like so. Mizrach Lamar. That's the whole sugi of Yom Kippur. The whole sugi of Yom Kippur is Salachti ki dvarecha, of being Megala Erva, and of which the Nachash did, but getting back to Adam HaRishon Koydem Achet. And here you have the sticky situation of Gilui Arayos Koydem Achet and Gilui Arayos Acher Achet, something which the Babylonians and the Romans couldn't possibly comprehend. So when they look, the Gemara says as follows, that when the Kruvim had a miracle to them, that when we're Oisim Ritzonei Shel Malkaim, when we're doing Hashem Ratzon, so the Kruvim were Pnei Mishalachav. They were facing each other, presumably hugging each other. When we were not doing Ritzonei Shel Malkaim, so the Kruvim were, like that kind of a stance, like looking the other way. It means to say, Pirush HaDvarim, that when we're Oisim Ritzonei Shel Malkaim, so we get back to Adam HaRishon Koydem Achet. And it's possible to be Mu'urim Zeh B'Zeh. Here's a kasha. If the Romans grabbed the Kruvim and they took them out, we were Einam Oisim Ritzonei Shel Malkaim at that time. So why did they see a mice of Gilui Arayos? Anybody want to attempt an answer to that question? It's a Shela Haguna.
On that,
Ritva's kasha.
on that spot, they realized, on that exact Nakuda, as they came down, they realized what they were doing, the wrong that they were doing, and they reached a new level. That may have been the level they were looking for.
Meaning, as the Romans walked into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the shock of Klal Yisrael brought them to a matzav of tshuva, hagufa.
A common Purim.
So, may Ashbais Yorim Evyoin. That this was a moment of Mikimi Me'afradol. And Dafka, as it was being violated, the Chruvim began to hug each other. But the matzav was, that's what the Ritva says. So Kivantu l'divrei Ritva. So to the Romans, to the Goyim, they saw the mice of the Chruvim so much different than the way the Kohen Gadol saw it in Yom Kippur. It's the case until today that anything having to do with intimacy, be'enei hagoyim, is complete schmutz. Celibacy is a virtue.
Original sin. Original sin. That's the ultimate sin.
But to the Jew, to be married and to be intimate, at that moment of intimacy, Yud Kei Vav Kei, Shechina B'neiim. What Shechina B'neiim? That could be a moment, could be with the right kavanas, etc. That could be a moment of Adam HaRishon and Reuvein. But if the moment is abused or selfish or not kedusha, so it becomes a moment of Gilui Arayos. The same kedusha becomes Gilui Arayos, which is the worst thing. So it's Yom Kippur, we read about Gilui Arayos, we go, hey, let's not get confused between the Chruvim, which were Mu'urim Zeh B'Zeh, and you hanging outside, walking the streets here. It's Gilui Arayos. It's the moment of intimacy is a very, very confusing moment. So therefore, it can't be B'Pumbi anymore. It can't be. It has to be B'Chashay. Both Moshe Rabbeinu on the Har Sinai has to be quiet and still and private, and so too the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, the Salachti Kidvarecha Mu'urim Zeh B'Zeh has to be quiet, and our own Adam HaRishon Kodem Achet situation of Arumim Hain, where it's Arumim somehow okay. So that's something even the Hasidim Rishonim have a hard time being massive. We're supposed to do that. In other words, we're also brought up that that's wrong. So all of a sudden becomes right. How does that work? It's very simple. The same thing could be wrong. The same thing could be Gilui Arayos, could be the biggest Hashras HaShechina, Shechina B'neiim. I was reading Agav that my son Sender was a rabbi in Virginia, so he got a phone call from a priest. And the priest wanted to meet with him, but he didn't know missionary, like what is that? But the chinuch in our house is you never say no. Like it's on the vocabulary. It comes to these things. You never know. So he said, okay, let's go out for lunch. And so, we keep kosher. Okay. They went to Starbucks. So fast forward, they met like 6 times, and you could read online. Fascinating. The priest wrote a blog describing almost word for word these meetings that he had with this young rabbi. Very interesting. The whole thing, as the priest says, sounds like a joke. You know, a rabbi and a priest met in Starbucks. and it was really fascinating. You know what the question. There's no Lacan here. The very first question or trouble that this priest had was how can intimacy be considered a positive thing when it's such a negative thing? According to the Catholic Church, there's total celibacy, but even in the other churches, there ain't no mitzvah.
You could ask it the other way also. How could it be considered a negative thing when it's such a positive thing?
Well,
That's the emes.
That's the emes. So the big chiddush of blog 1 was, why is this a bad thing? It's a holy thing. It's a good thing. The priest writes, it blew my mind. It's so interesting. It's the Romans and the Jews. Two are looking at the Chruvim, and imagine you're walking out with the Chruvim, and the Jews are saying, "Wow, I said the holy Jews are saying that, wow, this is the most holy thing in the world," and the Romans are parading down the street saying, "Look at the tumah of the Jewish people; they're just like everybody else." Read the first kina of Tisha B'Av in the morning. Nachshavas ka'arya. Arya. Arut mu'urim zabazat. Nachshavas ka'arya. They looked at it. It looks the Mice of Erva. And the Mice of Avodah Zarah. The Babylonians said it's Avodah Zarah. And the Romans said it's Erva. And what do we say to both of them? Get your mind out of the gutter. What are you doing there? This could be, but the Lucha Shniyos were nitna b'chashoy. Or nitna b'chashoy because it's really I don't know if this is a gilui for Starbucks. It's a.
Was he one of these married priests or non-married priests?
He's married now.
Okay. Pick up that.